Welcome in, people. Let's get started here. Top UFC prospects fighting this March. Now, the criteria is simple for me. You must be outside the top 10 and no UFC main event experience to be eligible as a prospect. Now, one exemption from the list for this month, Della Maddelena. He is outside the top 10. He's the number 11 ranked welterweight, but he is not a prospect in my book. He is a top contender. He's fighting Gilbert Burns at UFC 299. That is a contender's fight, not a prospect fight. Della Maddelena exempt from the list. He's 2 wins away from a title shot in the welterweight division. I'm looking forward to his fight against Gilbert Burns. He is exempt from the list. Okay, let's get started. Umar Nurmagomedov. That's right, Nurmagomedov. Umar is the cousin of Khabib. He is an exciting bantamweight prospect. I'm really looking forward to his fight this Saturday, March 2nd. He is not like a prototypical Nurmagomedov. He loves to strike. He is an elite kicker. He has phenomenal dexterity in his hips, ridiculous athleticism combined with technique. This is a really, really high-level guy. Like I mentioned, cousins with Khabib and the older brother of Bellator lightweight champ Usman Nurmagomedov, who has a very similar fighting style, loves to strike. He has that ridiculous question mark kick that he landed on Benson Henderson. So yeah, Umar, like I mentioned, a really talented prospect and someone who's been hard to matchmake in the UFC, as Dana White will tell you.
That's a guy not everybody's beating the door down to fight, so.
All right, let's look at some numbers here. Umar undefeated, 16-0, 4-0 in the UFC, 28 years old. He's the number 12th ranked bantamweight. He is very, very well-rounded, 7 subs, 7 decisions, and 2 knockouts. And he fights top prospect from Kazakhstan, Beksat Almakan, who is 17-1. That's this Saturday, March 2nd. So let's look at Umar's game here. Like I mentioned, his kicking game is elite. He has a very, very filthy front kick that he'll land on anyone at any time. And the dexterity in his hips, too. He'll land these shots, front kick from his lead leg, question mark kick from his lead leg. He'll switch stances effortlessly. Very, very talented. He started as a freestyle wrestler, but then began practicing Thai kickboxing. Now, looking at his other skills here, he is a high-level grappler, obviously, right? He's Khabib's cousin. He trained under the great Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. And what you'll see from him is he likes to strike, and that's his preferred method of victory, right? He wants to knock you out. But if he needs to, he'll take you down, he'll ground and pound you, and then he'll cinch in the rear naked choke and tap you out. And this, of course, right, as Nurmagomedovs do, have phenomenal ground control, really, really solid ground games. So he will take you down, he will maul you, and he will win a fight grappling. But his preferred method of fighting is striking, which is cool. It's not a prototypical Nurmagomedov. Usman and Umar are now showing that new generation that we saw a little bit different from Khabib. So those are his pros. Very, very elite kicking game and a well-rounded grappling game as well. Now, another pro that we've seen most recently, his speed and power are developing quite well. We saw this against Raoni Barcelos. He knocked him out, missed on the knee, and then landed a quick little left hand, put him out cold. So the speed obviously always there, and the power developing as he grows and matures in his fight game. So Umar, a very talented bantamweight, someone who I think could challenge Sean O'Malley, no doubt. Those who follow the sport would agree. Very well-rounded game. He takes on Beksat Almakan this Saturday, March 2nd. Next up, Javid Basharat. Similar to Umar, another very talented and skilled bantamweight striker. Very well-rounded game. He'll hit you, piece you up with anything he can on the feet. His hands, his knees, his elbows, his kicks. This dude is a stud, man. Undefeated as well, like Umar. Javid is very, very talented. I'm excited to see him fight this Saturday. Now, let's look at some numbers here on Javid. Like I mentioned, undefeated at 14-0. He's 3-0 in the UFC, 28 years old. He's unranked right now at bantamweight, coming from Afghanistan, moving to England at 5. Well-rounded as well, 6 subs, 5 KOs. And he fights Ayman Zahabi this Saturday, the Canadian who's on a roll as well. Now, let's look at some of Javid's skills. Like I mentioned, elite, well-rounded striking skills. So Javid, very, very fast hands, sharp technique. He will box you up. He'll piece you up with his boxing skills. And what I love about Javid is he's in and out of range, really solid distance management, but he also doesn't discriminate. He'll work the body and he'll work the head. Really, really nice body work that we've seen ever since he came into the UFC from the Contender Series. We saw it against Trevin Jones, against Tony Gravely, and of course on the Contender Series. Listen to this body shot on the Contender Series. It's just brutal.
Advantage on the ground.
Now, Javid, with that creativity that he has on the feet, he'll work the head up top and he'll work the body, and he'll do so like Umar, switching stances effortlessly into shots. And when he's really feeling it, he's very creative and he just flows on the feet. You know, the spinning back fist into the left hook, into the body kick, spinning 360 and then elbow there on Tony Gravely. A very diverse, well-rounded skill set on the feet. And his kicking game, like I mentioned, solid as well. He usually uses his hands to piece you up, but you know he will kick you if needed. That is part of his game as a well-rounded striker. Now, another pro that I've noticed with Javid, he is also a very, very well-rounded grappler. Now, like Umar, he'll strike more than Umar. He's probably 95% of the time striking, but he has a really solid clinch game. He'll knee you, he'll elbow you, and his takedown defense is also phenomenal because people obviously do not want to strike with Javid. He'll piece you up for 3 or 4 or 5 rounds. So his takedown defense is phenomenal. He'll use his frame really well. He'll use the whizzer. He'll get back to his feet in 10 seconds, no problem on most dudes who he's fought so far in the UFC, mid-level guys. So I'm excited to see what he does against top-level opposition. Zahabi isn't top-level, but it's going to be a good fight. So yeah, takedown defense is phenomenal. And then if he needs to, he can take you down. We've seen him do it against Gravely. We've seen him do it against Mateusz Mendonca. And then we've seen him do it on the regional scene as well. Most notably, grappling-wise, we saw him just devastate on Danny White's Contender Series, beating the hell out of Orhan Kalan. He took him down, ground and pounded him for about 3 rounds, bloodied him up really bad, and then cinched in the guillotine choke. And he was very, very confident, too, in the guillotine choke. He looked over at his corner, smiled, nodded, and then about 3 seconds later, his opponent tapped. So dude's got submission skills, grappling skills, and, of course, striking skills. And the third thing I'll note on Javid is excellent fight IQ. He's 14-0 for a reason. He manages range and distance phenomenally well. His opposition's attacks, he knows when to grapple, knows how to defend, knows how to push the pace on the feet. He's a stud. So he fights Zahabi on March 2nd, this coming Saturday. All right, up next, Robelis de Spagne. I don't know how to say his name, but if you didn't already know, this guy is an absolute freak. Taekwondo bronze medalist in the 2012 London Games, and an absolute freak in the MMA scene through 4 fights. He's 4-0. He's won all 4 by first round knockout. This was his first fight. He won at the very end of the first round. His next 3 fights, he's won all under 20 seconds, 2 of which in 4 seconds. This man has, as John Anik would say, the death touch. The proverbial death touch. I mean, it's freaky. This fight was probably his least impressive, the Travis Gregoire fight. It looks like it was an early stoppage. If you watch the slow-mo here, or the replay here, he landed some hammer fists, right? And Gregoire looks like he's defending, but he goes limp right here for a second. So it looks like a good stoppage. But this next one here, head kick and then a short little right hand out stiff. You see him posturing with the arms. Just a freaking scary knockout. And then most recently, 4 seconds in, boom. Hard right hook right to the jaw, a stiff right hand to the jaw, and then the dude just goes stiff himself. Just nasty stuff. So let's look at some numbers here. Robelis is 4-0, like I mentioned, all 4 wins by knockout. He's 35 years old, so he's up there in age, but he's a freak. 6'7" with an 87-inch reach would be a UFC record. He's coming from Cuba, moved to Florida, and he's taking on Josh Parisian at 299. That should be March 9th. So let's see here. Pros, obviously, scary power, right? He has that Ngannou type death touch power, and obviously the striking pedigree. He's an Olympic Taekwondo medalist in the 2012 Olympic Games, and then obviously his measurables. I mean, 6'7", he's not fat, he's in shape, and then the reach at 87 inches is just unheard of. So those are some scary pros right there. Cons, obviously he's very new to MMA, so grappling is a serious question mark. He only started training in 2019, so obviously a question there. And then what if it goes past round 1 and he can't get the knockout? How does his cardio hold up? That's a big question. And again, his age, 35, and lack of MMA experience, both major question marks. I'm expecting Robelis to knock out Parisian. This should be a really fun prospect showcase for Robelis de Spagne. Next up, Nursulton Mokaev. Now, this man is violence personified. That's a tongue twister, too, of a name. Nursulton Mokaev. This Uzbekistani middleweight is also a freak. 6'5". He made his UFC debut against Bruno Ferreira and knocked him out in the very first round as a significant underdog. Bruno was undefeated at this fight. I think he was 10-0 or 11-0, and Nursulton came in and starched him, landed that straight right and then the ground and pound to solidify the deal and put him unconscious. So let's look at some numbers here for Nursulton. He is, like I mentioned, middleweight. He's 35-8, so a ton of experience at only 30 years of age. 6'5" would be the tallest active middleweight. He's from Uzbekistan, trains in Philly, and he's a finisher, man. 20 subs, 13 knockouts in those 35 wins, and he takes on Dumas at the end of the month. Now, looking at some pros here for Nursulton, he is a very explosive and rangy kickboxer. Now, coming out of Uzbekistan, he started out with karate and then I believe combat sambo. Could be wrong. I know it was karate and then hand-to-hand combat. That's what it was. And so what you'll see from him is really vicious striking, right? A rangy kicking attack, spinning heel kicks, that soccer kick we saw. And then, knees from range on opponents who are feigning takedowns or flying knees in general. And every shot he throws with bad intentions. He's looking to knock you out. His hands, obviously that large frame allows you to, get people when you're out of range, hurt them bad. He's also had kickboxing and boxing experience in K1 on the amateur scene in Eastern Europe. So he really knows what he's doing on the feet. He's a very experienced and dangerous kickboxer. And like I mentioned, 33 finishes out of 35 wins. 20 of those have come in the submission department. He is a Kimura specialist. He has 6 Kimuras on his record. That's right, 6 Kimuras. So he'll threaten it when he's getting taken down. He'll threaten it to change positions. It's really nasty, man. He jumps on the Kimura immediately. He's truly a Kimura specialist, and he loves attacking it from bottom, from half guard or full guard. Really, really nasty Kimura. And I think he has 2 Americanas as well. So for jiu-jitsu guys, that's like the fundamental submissions you learn. Kimuras, Americanas. Cool to see a guy really taking advantage there. And then, of course, he has the arm bars locked in. He loves the triangle arm bar as well. So just a really, really scary dude, both on the feet and on the ground. He's looking to finish you at all times. 35 wins, 33 are by finish. That's just freaky. And then going back to the Kimura as well, he'll threaten the Kimura to get, from bottom to sweep, bridge up, and then sweep positions and get back in a mount or a side control. So, dude always looking to threaten you, whether it's from bottom or top, and then ground and pound the hell out of you. He's got really, really vicious ground and pound. And the last thing I'll note on the pros is violence, man. I mentioned at the start, he is violent. Whether he's taking you down, he's slamming you, whether he's ground and pounding you, he's really looking to hurt you bad. He'll get in a mount and just rain down blows. He has really, really strong elbows, hammer fists, and just always looking for the kill. This fight, actually, they threw in the towel, which you don't see much in MMA. Here in the OFC Open Fighting Championship, just landing really, really hard hammer fists. And thankfully, the ref stepped in there. Oh, in Brave, he was caught in a triangle, and he slammed his opponent down for the knockout. That was recently. I think this was 2 years ago. Got caught in the triangle and then just slammed his opponent down, sort of old days Pride style. Reminds you of Rampage or Matt Hughes. So really cool knockout there. And then obviously the debut against Bruno Ferreira really showed off his violence, the right and then the hammer fist. He is also a 2-time champ, WF Global Middleweight champ, and a welterweight and middleweight champ in Open Fighting Championship. A few cons for Nursulton. He is quite comfortable to stay on bottom and guard, chasing submission, so that's something he should avoid in the UFC. He doesn't want to lose rounds. I know he's going for the finish on bottom, but if he gets complacent and he loses rounds, not a good thing. Also, his takedown defense needs work. When he fights good wrestlers and grapplers, he seems to get taken down quite easily. And then last thing, he is very, very reckless, which is great for finishing people, right? He puts himself in dangerous situations because he's trying to hurt others, and that's great for finishing people, but it also puts you in vulnerable positions, so he'll need to avoid that in the UFC. And he did a good job of staying composed, not too reckless in his debut, so something to consider there. Nursulton will take on Cedric Dumas at the end of the month, March 30th. That should be a great fight. Next up, Payton Talbot. Now, if you're looking for a young and exciting bantamweight striker, this is your guy. He's got really, really clean, crisp boxing skills. Very reminiscent of a young Sean O'Malley. He hates that comparison, but it's true. So if we look at the numbers here, Payton Talbot, 7-0, 1-0 in the UFC, young at 25 years of age. Out of Reno, Nevada, he went to the University of Reno and learned martial arts just thereafter. I think in 2017 he started training. And he takes on another top prospect in Cameron Simon at the end of the month. Now, looking at Talbot's game, he has a very, very good pressure and volume-heavy striking attack. What you see on the Contender Series is what you get. He's always pushing the pace, going forward, making sure you're stepping back, and he's throwing 4 combos to your 1. He'll eat a shot or 2 just to land 3 or 4. And he's got some really, really pretty boxing too. It's not the cleanest technique, but it's fun to watch, right? He'll throw shots from all sorts of different angles. He's long for the weight class too. He uses his kickboxing well, and he's a guy who's very game to strike. He's noted in interviews that he hates grappling and he just wants to stand and trade. So that's a fun guy to watch if you're looking for striking. Another thing, he is very creative. When he enters that flow state, that subconscious flow state, he lands beautiful shots, man. He's just going with flying knees and uppercuts and elbows and really fun strikes from all sorts of different angles and fun kicks as well. And a guy who, when he starts to feel it, he's really fun to watch and hard to beat too. Obviously, he hasn't fought the toughest opposition, but he's a really fun guy to watch. Grappling too, one of his pros, off athleticism. You'll see him do backflips. He had this treetop single leg against Reyes Cortez, backflipped out of it against Aguirre, backflipped out of a double leg. And then when he gets to the ground in dominant positions in mount, he lands hammer fists, elbows. He'll take your back and choke you out as well. He only has 1 sub, but he's growing. He's 25 years old. He's learning as he fights. So a fun guy to keep an eye on. And then his cons, he does keep his hands quite low and his chin in the air. Striking defense is definitely to be improved. It's definitely a question mark on Payton Talbot's part. And then, like I mentioned, he's still learning how to grapple. So one of his skills is grappling off athleticism, right? Being able to use his athletic talent to, avoid takedowns, but it's still something he needs to work on. He's very young and raw in MMA. Another thing to note, Payton Talbot is a 3-time A1 Combat Bantamweight champ. That's Uriah's promotion. And he will take on Cameron Simon March 23rd. Another prospect I could have highlighted here. This is a great prospect showcase. Next up, honorable mentions, starting off with Shamil Gaziv, a heavyweight from Dagestan who's undefeated. He's 12-0 overall, 1-0 in the UFC, 11 finishes through those 12 wins, and he's 6'4". He's a big boy in the heavyweight division. He came in on the contender series, immediately knocked his opponent down the first strike he threw, 5 seconds into the fight, and then secured the rear naked. He was a bit sloppy on the ground before the rear naked, but nonetheless got it done. And a guy who's always putting the pace in, putting the pressure, looking to strike, looking to throw bombs, uppercuts, hooks, deadly ground and pound, and someone on the regional scene who was a Fight Nights Global super heavyweight champ, the Grand Prix MMA champ, and a guy in Brave too who's done some damage with some big knockouts. Fun story too for Shamil Gaziv. He was on the Dagestan national volleyball team. And then one day after a game, Habib's dad, Abdulmanap, came up to him and invited him to train MMA in his class. And since that day, he's been an MMA fighter. And we saw a fun debut, a UFC debut against Martin Budai. Just lit him up for all I think 7 minutes of the fight. Came in as an underdog and just butchered him from the start. Budai really showed nothing this fight. Gaziv came in, I think he had 50 significant strikes in the first round, just really put on a good pace and got the TKO there at the start of the second round. So Gaziv takes on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Only 1 fight into his UFC career does he get a main event. That's similar to Yuri Prohashka. I think he did that. He did that after the dominant Uzdemir knockout and then got Dom Reyes with the spinning elbow, and that was his first main event. So Gaziv comes in here against Jairzinho. We know how dangerous Rozenstruik is, has that scary knockout power. We saw the Overeem knockout just busting his lip open, and a guy who really only needs 1 shot to put your lights out. So Gaziv's going to need to be careful because Rozenstruik, he has 13 wins, 12 of those are by knockout. 7 of his UFC wins, all 7 are by knockout. He's a prolific kickboxer, 76-8, 64 of those 76 wins were by knockout. That's a big ratio for kickboxing. So a dude who's very, very dangerous on the feet. This should be a fun fight. I hope they bring it. Shamil Gaziv, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That's the main event for this coming Saturday. Next up, Asu Almabayev, a skilled flyweight prospect to keep an eye on. 18-2, 1-0 in the UFC, 9 submissions through those 18 wins, and a guy who trains with Shavkat Rakhmonov, so you know he's training with the best of the best over there in Almaty, Kazakhstan, which is his hometown where he grew up and now where he's training. So Asu was the flyweight champ in the NFC and M1 Global promotions. He's a solid striker. I wouldn't say really good striker. He's a solid striker. Nice uppercut knockout here to retain the flyweight belt in NFC. But predominantly a grappler, a very skilled grappler. He's got good double leg, a good, really, really nice body lock. Once he gets the body lock in, you're done for. He's taking you down, he's slamming you down. And a guy with a phenomenal rear naked choke. I believe he has 6 rear naked chokes on his record. So he gets you to the ground and pound, takes your back, and it's basically game over. And obviously he has a few other submissions. I think he has an armbar, a guillotine, and a triangle. So a guy who can really get it done on the ground. We saw him through the Fight Nights Global and Brave CF, and I think it was mainly M1 Global and Brave CF. He had a really, really solid series of performances, grappling primarily, to the point where he's now on a 14-fight win streak due to his dominant grappling game. So this is a guy that can do big things in the flyweight division. We obviously have a few prospects there like Tatsuro Taira and Muhammad Mokaev. I don't think he's at Tatsuro Taira's level or Mokaev's level, but I think he's definitely a fun prospect to look out for. In his UFC debut, he dominated Ode Osborne, came in there, took him down at will, got to his back, cinched in the rear naked choke, and that was game, set, match. So this is a fun guy to look out for. Asuel Mabayev, he takes on CJ Vergara at UFC 299. Vergara's a dog. He's fun to watch as well, so this should be a good fight. I'm expecting Asu to dominate. I expect him to take him down and submit him. Tatsuro Taira submitted Vergara easily, so this should be a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. Asu Almabayev, a name to look out for in the flyweight division. Next up, Isaac Dolgarian. Now, speaking of grappling and talent, this man has it all in the grappling department. 6-0, 1-0 in the UFC with a 100% finish rate at bantamweight. This guy was the NCAA Wrestling National finalist as a true freshman in college, and he started training MMA in 2019. He's only a blue belt, but a guy who's risen the ranks regionally very quick. He's got phenomenal wrestling, as I mentioned, NCAA Wrestling National finalist, and then he'll ground and pound the hell out of you until you give up his back, your back, and then he'll sink in the rear naked choke. And a guy who really has vicious ground and pound. Asu Almabayev, the previous guy, solid control, right? Good submissions. Isaac Dolgarian takes you down and batters the hell out of you for as long as you can take it until the ref stops the fight. This is a guy who's really trying to make a name for himself. He came in on his UFC debut against Francis Marshall, who's a good prospect in his own right, and completely butchered him. Came in, took him down, ground and pound, elbow, hellbow, and then got it done there. Jason Herzog, good stoppage. Francis Marshall was completely battered. Isaac Dolgarian, very exciting prospect. Very raw, like I mentioned, 6-0. He's only a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he only started training MMA in 2019 with that really strong wrestling background. So he takes on Christian Rodriguez, who's a great prospect in his own right. I could have totally highlighted him here in this video. He had that phenomenal win against Raul Rosas Jr., where he was a 3-1 underdog, came in, all the hype on Raul Rosas, and C-Rod just completely dominated him. So this is a great fight, man. Christian Rodriguez versus Isaac Dolgarian. I can't wait. This should be a high-level, entertaining bantamweight bout. Okay, next up on my list, and the last guy on my list, Kyler the Matrix Phillips, a talented and exciting prospect to watch. 11-2, he trains with Sugar Sean at the MMA Lab, and again, he is a bantamweight prospect. Now, Kyler Phillips brings incredible athleticism and creativity in his striking approach and a phenomenal ground game. He's been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since he could walk at the Renzo Gracie Academy. His dad sent him there when he was 3 years old. And Kyler Phillips, just a really athletic, fun guy to look out for. Now, he was the 2012 IBJJF World Champion and the 2013 CIF Wrestling Champion. Those who live in California know how impressive that is. He is a Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu brown belt and a Nikki Dokai red black belt. So that's just how good he is on the ground. His Jiu-Jitsu is insane. We saw it here against Marcelo Rojo. And he was threatening the American lock or the Kimura and then landed the triangle armbar. So Marcelo Rojo there got a taste of how good Kyler Phillips really is. And Kyler Phillips takes on Pedro Munoz at 299. A great opportunity for both of them. A few others on the list that I could have mentioned that I didn't have time for. Mike Davis, we know how talented he is as a striker, how powerful and vicious he is. Vitor Petrino, he is taking on Tyson Pedro this Saturday. Not a huge fan of Vitor Petrino, but clearly the dude has power. He's undefeated, I believe, and a fun guy to look out for. CLD, Christian Leroy Duncan, the former middleweight champion in Cage Warriors, a guy who again brings freak athleticism and power. And then last on the list, Steve Ursig, the talented flyweight Australian who is fighting this Saturday against Matt Schnell. If you've liked this content and want more MMA niche content, please subscribe and like. Thank you.